Hello BookTube, Books with Banks back again with another beautiful Malazan scene analysis video. Continuing on from my last one with many of those same characters, today we're looking at a scene from the 10th and final volume of Steven Erikson's Malazan Book of the Fallen, Book 10, The Crippled God. If you don't want to be spoiled on anything from this last book, I recommend checking out maybe some of my other videos on scenes from any of the earlier books that you might be like caught up to or that you might have read to. I also have a few other videos on my channel where I talk about like adaptations and other fantasy genre type things. So please like, subscribe, check out the other videos, all that fun stuff if you're curious. For this one, I'll just say a spoiler warning only for the first 100 or so pages of The Crippled God. I didn't want to do anything too far along in this book, just in case someone, accidentally stumbles on this video without meaning to get spoiled. I figured why risk it. So today we're looking at a short scene from the beginning of chapter 4. This is pages 131 to 134 in the mass market paperback. If you watched my last video in the series, you'll know all about the big battle that Erikson put the Bone Hunters through at the end of Book 9, Dust of Dreams. Here, near the beginning of Book 10, we're catching up with several of those same characters in the aftermath of that battle. I really wanted to look at one particular scene and moment in which we're catching up with the officer Blistig, who is a disgruntled, distrusting, faithless, embittered officer of Tavor's. Blistig no longer has faith in Tavor, but furthermore, I'd say he no longer has confidence in himself as a soldier. I will be referencing his attitude about the army's current situation in contrast to that of the recently deceased fan favorite Fist. Keneb, a comparison Blistig himself is well aware of. I'll be referencing that and I'll be picking apart a lot of other elements of this scene. So, here we go. And remember, they've just gotten through a battle. They're recovering. They're in a camp. Sweat enough a man could drown in. He shivered beneath his furs, something he did every night since the battle, jolting awake, drenched, heart-pounding, after images behind his eyes. Keneb, in the instant before he was torn apart, twisting round in his saddle, fixing Blistig with a cold, knowing stare, not 10 paces away, their eyes locking. But that was impossible. I know it's impossible. I was never even close. He didn't turn, didn't look back, didn't see me, couldn't. Don't you howl at me from the dark, Keneb. Don't you stare. It was nothing to do with me. Leave me alone. Okay, we'll take our first break there. Erikson's done this before, this technique, where he's using the demise of another character to torment a living character that we're seeing through the viewpoint of. He did this with Ruled Sengar in a scene that I looked at from Reaper's Gale, and now here he's put us inside Blistig's self-loathing mind, and Blistig's projecting that self-loathing onto this, this PTSD sort of replaying and reimagining of the moment before Keneb's death. He's using Keneb's final moments to cast hateful thoughts kind of back inwards at himself. This is a very uncomfortable way for Erikson to open the scene and bring us into Blistig's kind of tormented mind. Intentionally uncomfortable, I'd say. Going on. But this damned army didn't know how to break, understood nothing about routing before a superior enemy. Every soldier alone, that was what routing was all about. Instead, they maintained order. We're with you, Fist Blistig, see our boots pound. It's north we're going, is it? They ain't pursuing, sir, and that's a good thing. Can't feel it no more, sir, you know. Hood's own breath, they're on the back of my neck, can't feel it. We're in good order, sir. Good order. Good order, he whispered to the gloom in his tent. We should be scattered to the winds, finding our own ways back to civilization, to sanity. Another quick break. It's kind of like his own soldiers, or he's thinking at least, that his own soldiers have more faith in him than he does. But notice that he's so far a little vague about what exactly it is his soldiers are loyal to. Is it him or something or someone else? We'll circle back to that, or the scene will circle back to that. The sweat was drying, or the scraped underside of the fur skin was soaking it all up. He was still chilled, sick to his stomach with fear. What's happened to me? They stare, out there in the darkness, they stare. Coltane, Dweeker, the thousands beyond Aaron's wall. They stare, looking down on me from their crosses. And now Kenneb, there on his horse. Ruth and Good, Quick Ben, the dead await me. They wonder why I am not with them. I should be with them. They know I don't belong here. Again, even more faces confronting him, not just Kenneb anymore, I guess they're confronting what he thinks is his own fear, what he probably thinks that he's a bit of a coward. He's recognizing his lack of confidence, and then at the end of that passage he says, or the quote is, "I don't belong here," and I think we can translate or interpret that to mean all of them, all of these heroes that I just listed, they're all worthy of being alive, but not me. And that really just breaks your heart that someone's thinking so harshly about themselves. Also pay attention to the sweat imagery throughout the passage. I think Erikson puts that in at just about the right amount to keep us feeling uncomfortable, keep us knowing how, yeah, he's sweating because it's warm and their conditions are miserable, but he's also just so anxious and like so perturbed at where he finds himself, where his life has taken him. Yeah. Moving on. Once he'd been a fine soldier, a decent commander, clever enough to preserve the lives of his garrison, the hero who saved Aaron from the whirlwind. But then the adjunct arrived, and it all started to go wrong. She conscripted him, tore him away from Aaron. They would have made him High Fist, the city's protector. They would have given him a palace. She stole my future, my life. Malaz City was even worse. There he'd been shown the Empire's rotted core. Malak Rel, the betrayer of Aaron's legion, the murderer of Coltane and Dweeker, and all the rest. No, there was no doubt about any of that. Yet there the Gistal was, whispering in the Empress's ear, and his vengeance against the Wiccans was not yet done, and against us. You took us into that nest, Tavor, and more of us died. For all that you have done, I will never forgive you. Standing before her filled him with bile. Every time he almost trembled in his desire to take her by the throat, to crush that throat, to tell her what she'd done to him, even as the light left those dead, flat eyes. I was a good officer once, an honorable soldier. Now I live in terror. What will she do to us next? Egatan wasn't enough. Malaz City wasn't enough, nor Lether either. Never enough. Naruk, not enough. Damn you, Tavor. I will die for a proper cause. But this... okay, so this is a real turning point of this kind of introspective scene. So before, it could be a little bit open to interpretation. Was he blaming himself for all that had gone wrong? For why these kind of ghostly projections of these other heroes looked at him so critically and hatefully? But no, now we see that he has actually found a victim, a kind of lodestone for all that has gone wrong since he thought of himself as a quote-unquote good soldier. Nowadays, he considers himself a rotten soldier, and it was all in his mind because of her, because of Tavor. And Erikson, clever as always, knows that he's been building his readers' trust and faith in Tavor, despite all of the hardships she's put the Bone Hunters through. Erikson's been peeling back reason after reason of why we're getting more and more excited, I think, to see where she's going, what her ambitions are. And I, for one, have only grown respect for her kind of mad, elusive ambitions more and more as the series has gone on. So here, now, in this scene, first, Erikson makes us feel bad for Blistig being so hard on himself, but then he turns that feeling kind of on its head by showing how harshly Blistig isn't really being hard on himself, but how harshly Blistig is shifting the blame over onto Tavor, and how violently his hate for her has grown. And we're thinking to ourselves, yeah, you know what, Blistig? Maybe you don't deserve to be here as much as Kenneb does. But guess what? You are, and he isn't. Get over it, you miserable old fool. Also, before moving on, the way authors choose to title novels or chapters or whatever, it's always important and intentional. And Erikson always breaks up these books into subsections called books. So book 1 of Volume 10, The Crippled God, Part 1, Book 1, the novel's opening section is titled, quote, "He was a soldier." And I'm sure that that title is at least a reference to Blistig's thought process here. So if anything, I think Erikson choosing to title the whole opening section of his final volume with this idea of "he was a soldier" means that Erikson was planning from this point on, or all throughout this book, to tackle and explore the complex ideas of like a soldier's faith in not only their commanding officers, but a soldier's faith in him, but a soldier's faith in him or herself. Moving on. He'd never before known such hate. Its poison filled him, and still the dead looked on from their places in the wastes of Hood's realm. Shall I kill her? Is that what you all want? Tell me. The tent walls were lightening. This day, the parley, the adjunct fists arrayed around her, the new ones, the lone surviving old one. But who looks to me? Who walks a step behind me? Not Sort, not Kindly, not even Raband or Scanaro. No, the new fists and their senior officers look right through me. I am already a ghost. Already one of the forgotten. What have I done to deserve that? Kenneb was gone. Since Letherus, Kenneb had to all intents and purposes been commanding the bone hunters, managing the march, keeping it supplied, maintaining discipline and organization, in short, doing everything. Some people possess such skills. Running a garrison was easy enough. We had a fat quartermaster who had a hand in every pocket, a smiling oaf with a sharp eye, and our suppliers surrounded us, and whatever needed doing, why, it was just a written request away. Sometimes not even that, more a wink, a nod. The patrols went out, they came back, watches turned, gatekeepers maintained vigilance. We kept the peace, and peace kept us happy. But an army on the march was another matter. The logistics besieged him, staggered his brain, too much to think about, too much to worry over. Fine, we're now leaner. Ha, what a sweet way of putting it. We're an army of regulars with a handful of heavies and marines, so we're oversupplied, if such a thing even exists. But it won't last. She wants us to cross the wastelands, and what waits beyond them? Desert, emptiness, no, hunger waits for us. No matter how heaped our wagons, hunger and thirst. I won't take that on. I won't. Don't ask. But they wouldn't, would they? Because he wasn't Kenneb. I really have no reason to show up. I'm worse than Baniskar in that company. At least he's got the nerve to turn up drunk, to smile in the face of the adjunct's displeasure. That's its own kind of courage. Take one quick break here just to point out how I think Blistig is kind of saying that his self-loathing and his hatred of Tavor are kind of comparable to Baniskar's addiction to alcohol, his alcoholism. But at least Baniskar's addiction gives gives a priest some kind of courage to face Tavor, whereas Blistig is kind of left cowering in his incompetence. Anyway, moving on to finish up the scene. Activity in the camp now, as dawn approached. Muted, few conversations, a torpid thing awakening to brutal truths. Eyes blinking open, souls flinching. We're the walking dead. What more do you want of us, Tavor? Plenty. He knew it like teeth sinking into his chest. Growling under his breath, he pulled aside the furs and sat up. A fist tent. All that room for nothing, for the damp air to wait around for his heroic rise, his gods-given brilliance. He dragged on his clothes, collected his chill leather boots, and shook them to check for nesting scorpions and spiders, and then forced his feet into them. He needed to take a piss. I was a good officer once. Fist Blistig slipped the tethers of the tent flap and stepped outside. All right. He was a soldier. I feel like this subsection title, he was a soldier, and this idea is so heavily felt throughout this scene. How much could a good soldier be put through before eventually growing disillusioned and losing faith in the institution, in their commanders, in themselves? Blistig's been at his breaking point for a while now, but as we can see, and by his own kind of internal analysis, people like Kenneb were more patient, were more courageous, more persistent in their soldiering. There their constant sort of loyalty, that sort of mindset. So Blistig has been at his breaking point for a while now, but now, after the trauma of the most recent battle against the Naruk, instead of turning all of his violent hatred inward on himself, as he sort of starts to do, he's actually really just turning it all against Tavor, who's been leading the Bone Hunters. And Erikson is setting us up with a character directly opposed now to Tavor, Tavor being someone we've been growing to actually appreciate. At least I, in my reading of the series, I was growing to appreciate her more and more. So through this introduction to Blistig's current mindset, Erikson not only gives us an antagonist to kind of root against, but he's also introducing several questions that Erikson, is going to be exploring throughout this finale. Questions like, is blind loyalty a good thing? How much responsibility do officers and their soldiers take for the tragedies of warfare? Other questions like, how easy is it to cast blame around when really we're most frustrated with ourselves? Last but certainly not least, Blistig was a good soldier once, and now he was a distrusting and hateful man. What has become of all of the other characters in this massive 10-volume epic, this journey? Blistig was a soldier, Fiddler was a sapper, Crocus was a thief, Tok was a soldier, Tavor was a noblewoman, Karsa was kind of an arrogant rapist, Ganos was a soldier, Sari/Absolar was a fisherman's daughter. Really just take a moment to admire how far all of the characters have come throughout the whole series, for better or worse, and Erikson has carried them through all sorts of life-changing events. And he's able to convey this all-important concept through the viewpoint of a relatively, by this point, unlikable Blistig, who's not such a great soldier anymore. Anyway, I think I've said enough on why I love this scene. Please let me know in the comments down below what you think of Blistig, whether or not you interpreted the scene in the same way as me or not. I love talking about these moments, and in my next video, I'm actually moving on to a scene with Damask from Erikson's most recent Malazan publication, being book 1 of the Witness trilogy, The God Is Not Willing. I hope you'll look forward to that video. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to be notified when that video comes out. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.